I am here with Madeliene Black. Thank you so much for joining How to Have Extraordinary Relationships podcast. And we're here to talk to you about anything you want to talk about your relationship. So just to introduce Madeleine a bit, she's probably well known to a lot of you. She is the courage cultivator. She encourages people to stand in their power. She's had an amazing life. She's won lots of awards. She's a podcaster. She has books. She has pretty much everything you would want to know about. And she has an incredible story that you can find on her website and in many other places. But we'll do all that later on. Madeleine is part of the Forgiveness Project, and we are stronger than we think and live courageously as part of that message. So thank you for being here, Madeleine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, Lucy. Thanks for inviting me.
That's great. So just, would you like to tell us a bit about you and your story and what you would like, what would be helpful for people to hear you talk about today? What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, you made me think when you said, we want to talk about your relationship. And I thought, oh, what part of me would I want to speak about? So I think for me, I spent many, many years loathing myself, hating myself. And my journey has been about accepting me, what was done to me, knowing that wasn't my fault, and eventually actually really being okay with who I am and pretty proud of all that I've been through and what I do. So it's been a journey with myself, and I've had a relationship with fear, a relationship with shame, and all of those have really transformed now and transmuted into something else. So I share my story, I guess, that relationship of turning pain into purpose. So I guess there's many different strands that we can go down. So pick a strand, any strand.
Well, I think so we're talking about your relationship with yourself, but also through your story. And fear and shame, I think, are things that can really hold us back.
Absolutely.
So I would really love, I mean, there are a lot of people that live in fear and shame, even when they try really hard not to. So I'd be really interested in that if you're willing to share a bit about that.
Sure. So fear, I guess. So for those that don't know me, I have a history of sexual violence. I was gang raped when I was 13 and then raped 3 more times before the age of 18, which I only discovered those 3 more times in the writing of my memoir. And everything scared me, everything. Fear just walked alongside me all the time. And it's kind of, ironic, because after the worst things happened, then you become very scared. I became very fearful of the world. I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't feel safe anywhere or with many people. And it had already happened, as if I was thinking that it's going to happen again. But it's just trauma, the effects of trauma on our body and on our minds. So for a long time, I let fear dictate everything, and that really, really held me back. And shame, I guess the way shame really, really affected me was by being quiet. So I guess I've had a relationship with my voice as well, from never speaking out to speaking publicly about rape and sexual violence and my story and, that journey. But eventually I got to a place in my life where I was beginning to work my stuff, because my eldest daughter turned the same age that I was, and loads of memories returned that I had just locked away deep inside of me, and I couldn't really avoid them anymore. I couldn't, it was like this Jack in the Box that I couldn't just shut anymore, that the lid was open, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go and ask them to take all these memories away. I was a really bad client, because obviously you can't take memories away. You have to dive into these memories in order to, I guess, dilute the hold they have on you. And I really saw that everything that I was scared on was really based on what had happened. So it was in the past, or I was imagining it in the future. And so if I learned to stay in this moment here and now, I wasn't scared. It was all my imagination. So I just then started to challenge myself. I put myself into situations that I avoided, because that's what my fear told me to do. Just don't put yourself in those spaces, and then you'll be okay. So I avoided things for years, which, as you said rightly, held me back from living my life. I was overprotecting myself, protecting myself from living as well, whilst trying to keep myself safe. And once I started to challenge these fears, I thought it really was just my imagination. It really was all in my head. This also came on the back of a lot of therapy. I'm not just saying you can get up and do this overnight, but even just little things, putting my bin down at the end of the garden if Stephen was away, my husband, and it was dark and I'd forgotten. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't walk in the garden at night because it was dark, and everything scared me. And it's hard to remember now because I'm in such a fearless place. And the shame as well, the shame just really kept me quiet. I was just terrified. If people knew what I had been through, they would look at me how I incorrectly thought about myself, that they would see that I was this contaminated, worthless, less than dirty person that had been just, dehumanized. But that's what I was telling myself. Now I know that's not what people think of me. I don't think so anyway. And it was just my shame lying to me. It lied to me for years and it kept me quiet. And again, holds us back. So becoming a professional speaker, standing on the stage, sharing my story, every time I speak, it's like I just step into that shame and shine a light on it, and it can't exist, basically. So by doing the very things that I thought I could never do has transformed my relationship with both shame and fear.
It's an incredibly brave thing to do. I mean, you talk so eloquently about it because, as you said, really terrible things happened to you when you were young. I mean, it doesn't really matter the age, but you're very defenseless at that age.
Yeah.
And so what would the fear prevent you from doing? You were 13, and did your life change? Were you sort of pretty fearless before that? Is there a sort of before and after?
I think I was just quite a shy, little girl in the middle of 5 kids. But actually, after it happened, I became very rebellious because, I didn't speak about it for 3 years, and it's got to come out of your body somehow. So I used a lot of drugs and alcohol. I partied hard. I was very promiscuous. But then after that, it changed again, and then I became very wary. My main fears were being around men, and my main fears were my safety. So I'd get the car, I'd put the buttons down straight away. I'd go into a car park. I wouldn't go up. If I went up quite a few floors, I wouldn't go in the lift because somebody could come in the lift with me. Or if a man came in the lift, I would walk out. I couldn't walk on the street. If there was a man there, I'd cross the road. So, I wouldn't go in the taxi. I wouldn't drive late at night. Everything. I just put so much thought and effort into, am I safe? Am I going to be all right? Who's going to be there? Do I know them? I just drove myself crazy with fear.
Yes, so the fear is this is going to happen again. I'm going to be attacked.
Yeah.
That's so hard because I imagine part of you struggled with that, isn't it? Because actually you've survived. It's not great, but you've survived. But so one sort of train is, well, I'm okay, I've survived. But the other train of thought is, it's going to happen again.
Yeah. And I don't even know if looking back then that's what I was conscious of. It was maybe subconsciously that, my biggest thing was keeping myself safe, not losing control, which is kind of ironic really because we're never really in control. So I became quite OCD, I suppose, always needing to be in control and can't control anything really, even though that's my mind tell me if you're in control then you'll be safe. And not being around men that I didn't know, didn't really trust them. And I was very angry and very bitter and very sarcastic and very rude. And now I realise that was just a defence mechanism just to keep people away from me as well.
And what shifted that? You were saying at some point you realised you needed to look at it.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that my eldest became 13. So obviously that was a massive trigger. I was also studying psychotherapy, and through the course, I was doing a lot of personal development. So it's kind of doing courses that put you out of your comfort zone, that opened you up, because something did always drive me to clean this up. Once I saw, I thought I was a bit like a swan. Up above, I looked so in control, and underneath my feet were paddling like crazy just to keep afloat. So I had this image that I was a perfect wife, perfect mum, homekeeper, but actually it didn't take much to see under the surface that I was very fake, but not, maybe fake's not the word. I wasn't being genuine. I wasn't being my authentic self. I was always putting on a smile and wearing a mask, I guess, which is what we do a lot of the time. But underneath it, I didn't think people was too aware, but I think we are a bit like a greenhouse. I think people do see, even if we don't think they see. But yeah, definitely doing my course, doing all the personal development, and my daughter turning that age, it was always going to come back. It was always, but they triggered that, definitely, the combination.
And then you went and got some, you went on this big journey, because, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of this you write about is around on your website, as well as around forgiveness, which I think people find, I don't know how people react to that, but I think people always find it amazing, but also tricky to get their heads around.
It is very tricky, and I used to call myself an accidental forgiver. You know, I never ever wanted to forgive them. I was just really hated them. I just thought they weren't even humans. They were just animals, sadistic animals. But yeah, it took me by surprise. It was when I was having therapy, actually, near to the end of those 3 years, that the big time that I went. And he just said to me, and I was testing myself as well. The men that raped me were American, and I chose a male American therapist. I thought I need to put myself into these situations. So
Wow.
I know. So I was, you know, really quite tough once I made my mind up. I need to, you know, challenge everything and get out of my comfort zone, because I'd lived there for too long. And he just said to me one day, you know, did you ever think maybe they weren't born as rapists? And at first I just was so angry. I was never going to go back. And I thought, how could he ask me such a stupid thing? What a stupid statement to make. But he really just got me thinking, you know, and I just wanted to, I guess, understand what had gone wrong in their lives. You know, I think we all come in the same way. I do believe we're just a blank sheet as little babies. And I just wondered about them, and somehow I felt compassion in my heart, because I thought I've done a really good job of cleaning up my trauma and living my best life. You know, my best revenge was reversing my decision on never having children, because I thought it would be too similar to being raped. So I've had my 3 girls. I'm soon to be a grandma as well. Wow. So my best revenge continues. And I just thought, they've got to live with what they did to someone. Surely that's going to be harder than having that done to you. To live with that, whether they're aware or not, that's going to affect their lives in some way. And somehow, once I had that feeling of compassion, I just thought, what's happened to them, or what have they seen? What have they heard to make them think it was really okay to degrade me and dehumanize me? And I thought, you know, in their degrading of me, they're actually just degrading themselves. They really have no connection to their source, their goodness, their well-being. And that's when I saw, you know, I need peace. I need to let go of the anger and the hate and the revenge. And so I think of the word forgiveness as for giving me a better chance. So it wasn't really ever about them, you know, because I didn't need to meet them. I didn't need for them to sit down and say they're really sorry and what they did to me. I could quietly make that decision in my heart. And yeah, it really allowed me to accept all that was done, because a lot of my first few years of that therapy was just denial. I didn't want to believe that this had been done to me, and all the images I saw, I just thought I'd made them up, and I thought it wasn't that bad, and I just really, you know, diminished it and said, oh, I don't know why I'm still coming, you know, it's really, I think I've just made it up. And all of the denial was so strong. So forgiveness helped me to accept, yeah, all of that did happen. And I realized I'm not my body. I'm not what they did to me. That was just an event in my life. We're all so much more than in those events. And it just allowed me to let it go. Because I was just tired of being ashamed and being in fear and holding myself back and not living my best life. You know, I struggled to have my daughters or any children. And I thought, what kind of mum would I be if I can't show them that we can go through horrific times, but we can also walk through them? So yeah, I did it for many reasons, but ultimately to give myself peace.
It's an incredible message,
Yeah.
really. It's complicated, isn't it? Because, I mean, people talk a lot about forgiveness. So it's not like we get up one morning and go, oh, okay, I'm okay now, I forgive that person. It's nuanced. It's very
Yes.
nuanced.
Yes.
And what you've said, I think, is brilliant, is we're doing it for us. You know, you don't want to live in that place of sort of not forgiving people, because it's you that suffers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how is it? Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, I'm just going to just repeat. I just saw how much I was alive, but I wasn't really living. You know, I was just on autopilot before I really forgave. And forgiving, it just cracked something inside of me. It just shifted everything, and it was just like, my body did a massive sigh, can just let go. I don't need to hold on. And it's so hard to surrender to what is. It really, surrendering is so hard. I mean, I couldn't sleep for 3 years. I couldn't even surrender to go to bed at night. I couldn't even turn my head off. So yeah, I think it's just surrendering at the end of the day.
Yes. And the shame, you talked a bit about the shame, because a lot of people get very stuck in shame.
Yeah. I thought really if people knew, they wouldn't want to know me. And I thought if I tell my husband all the details as well, that he might not want to be with me anymore. All incorrect thoughts. And I thought that people would think, well, maybe she deserved it. She was drinking, she'd met boys and she'd liked to have parents. All of that self-blame, self-loathing, it was all wrapped up in it together. But I realized, shame is just part of trauma, and shame, especially in cases of sexual violence, rape, sexual abuse, are just strengthened by all the rape myths and the rape culture that's out there. We don't really give survivors a very good chance, especially with the conviction rates. You think, well, rape is almost decriminalized in this country. It's such a small percentage ends in the conviction. I think, well, they don't really take it seriously, but yeah, the shame it was like a cancer. It really was. It just ate away at me. And I just did anything to just keep quiet and not let people know. So when I went public, it was a bit of a shock, because some of my friends knew, not many. And the ones that did know, they didn't know it was near fatal, or all the details. And, I in my book and in most of my talks, I share quite a lot of what took place in the book. Is a lot more detail. And I see now, so Marina, who does run the Forgiveness Project, she doesn't call us storytellers, she calls us story healers. And every time I share my story, it doesn't just heal me, I see the effect it has on other people. So I would get messages from people that say, I really want to like your posts where you're speaking out about your story, but I'm scared if somebody sees me even like the post, they'll know it's happened to me. And why? Why should we be ashamed? Wow. It was a crime committed against my body. It was nothing to do with me. If your house is burgled, if you have your car smashed into, we're not ashamed. Why should we hold on to all that shame? I've realized I just held on to inappropriate shame for far too long. The shame never, ever really belonged to me. It was always their shame, but I just digested it. I took it internally and I did my best to nurture that shame for years. And I think it did run alongside the fear. I think they were good friends with me as well, but we've all broken up now, so it's good.
You've consciously uncoupled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Well, I mean, you are right. I mean, rape is virtually decriminalised here. What happens with that is that people don't report it.
Yeah, because they won't report it, because often we know we're not going to get the outcome that we want. And also it's so re-traumatizing. You're just a witness in your own trial. It's not really a trial, your trial, the rape trial. And, how you're treated by prosecution, defenders, it's just awful, all the accusations. And we've seen it. There was a famous case in Ireland where the judge even said to the survivor, the victim, well, you were wearing lacy thongs, what did you expect? And so that was awful, disgusting from a female judge. But then what happened afterwards in Ireland is that all the women took to the streets waving their lacy thongs in the air, saying, this is not an invitation to rape me. Thongs do not cause rape. And I know that now. I know that 100% of all rapes are caused by rapists. Nothing else at all. It wasn't my clothes or the drink or lying. It was these men who chose to rape me, and that was it. Nothing that I did.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's atrocious. You don't get, it's not like because you wear a lacy thong.
And if they've got down to your underwear, they've taken off your clothes.
Yeah. So hopefully there's going to be a shift. So how you go and talk about this a lot? You've really opened up a dialogue about it. How did that come about when you thought, okay, I'm gonna really, I'm going to shed light on this. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to go and talk about this.
Yeah, so it was really through the powers of social media. I came across the Forgiveness Project when I was myself going through those stages of forgiveness. I was looking at their website and reading all the stories of people that are just amazing, that can really turn their pain into purpose and can forgive so much. Just the serving other people and making a difference. I never once thought that I would be one of those stories. And then Marina, the founder, asked if she could share my story on her website. And because of the nature of the crime, she said, it's fine not to put your photo. You can be anonymous. And that's when I thought, No, why should I be anonymous anymore? I'm so tired of being ashamed. If I hide my face, I'm still allowing shame to win as well. So I said, no, it's fine, even though I was quite nervous. Put my name and my photo, and she did, which was nearly 10 years ago now. In September will be 10 years. And I shared it on my own social media channels, on Facebook, I think initially. And once I pressed that send button, I thought, oh, it's the way now. I was very jittery, but within moments, literally, lots of my friends contacted me and saying, I never knew this about you. Some of them, my friends said, oh, well, I kind of thought maybe something because you worked at Women's Aid, you worked at Rape Crisis, and you're a therapist now. And other people then I didn't know started to get in contact, and people that I knew shared their story with me for the first time, and other people, and then it went to different countries, and that little post went a bit viral. And then I just saw what Marina meant when she said that, the healing power that comes when we share our stories, not necessarily for me now, but for other people, the ripple effect. And some of the, I've had so many amazing stories that have come through me sharing my story. One woman in particular, a woman called Debbie Fanning, her therapist recommended she watch my first TEDx talk and read my book. She has a very similar story to me. She was gang raped in Glasgow on a night out, and she's now written her own book because she read my book, and she's now helping people. So it's that massive ripple effect of just allowing to be vulnerable and sharing, our darkest, innermost shameful secrets. And then it honestly, I'm not ashamed anymore. I shouldn't be ashamed. I really don't care who knows. It's just the more I share it, it just dissolves. It has no impact on me at all. And yeah, it's the best decision I've ever made. It's like my whole DNA in my body they're all different cells now. It doesn't feel like there's any fear, shame, trauma left inside of me. It's just a lot of work, but I've really, really worked it to drain my swamp, I guess.
So it's a really inspiring story for people. Do a lot of people come and share their stories with you? What this ripple effect once you started speaking and saying this is what happened to me?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you
my
have a flood
story's
of
very common. My story's, just a story of many people. So I have ability that I can share it, and stand on a stage. And so I feel like if that's what I can do, then it's my purpose. It's my duty to really help other people to find their voice. Because I think when we stand in our power and we share our story, our truth, there's nothing more empowering than that. It doesn't have to be on a stage or on a radio or TV, but sharing it with someone and you've never said those words out loud before, or even writing it down for yourself. Oh, it's going to shift so much inside of you. Because it takes up so much space, occupied so much of me. Every cell and every thought, every action I did was just always overshadowed by that. And now it's like, I feel like a free spirit now. Sounds a bit hippie, but yeah, that's really what I do. Feel like very different.
And people come and they tell you their story, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll always know if somebody says, "Is it okay to message you?" or "Can I give my daughter your number?" Or I think, okay. I always allow them to come to me. I will never take their number and contact them because it has to be on their terms. I just think, okay, I know what's coming. If somebody wants to meet for a coffee or somebody heard me speak, they say, "Can I speak to you in the interval or at the end?" And I always know. Or I just spoke recently at an event, and there was a woman who also in the middle of me speaking, there was questions at the end, and she started to share some of her story, and she shared with me at the end. So if they don't share there and then, they may contact me later, or but that's okay. That's really why I do it as well.
Do you feel that you take on their pain, or are you able to?
No, I'm because I am a psychotherapist as well. Even though I don't work as a therapist, I do have boundaries. So I will never be somebody's therapist. I will make sure that they have got good support, and I will signpost them where to go to get support, because I can't be everybody's therapist. It's be too much for me. And in the beginning, I think I used to answer messages instantly, but I'll answer them when it's convenient for me now. So it might not be straight away, but I'll always get back to people because I'm very touched, and I know myself. Calling rape crisis helplines, just picking up the phone and not even be able to speak. I couldn't, and then just putting the phone down, or just, they would coach me even though I was silent. Say, well, we know you're still there and it's okay, just take your time. Or ringing an appointment for a counsellor and putting the phone down. I know exactly what it feels like. It takes so much energy and effort to think I'm going to do it, and oh, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, what will they think? And that's the shame, you know, calling you back into that little dark corner and trying to think it's protecting you, but it wasn't really. After a while, it was really holding me back. So yeah, I know how tricky it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's so moving. Actually, makes me want, brings me to tears thinking of people phoning and not being able to speak, and the
Yeah.
person on the other end of the line saying, "It's okay,
Yeah.
I'm still here."
No, it made me move. It makes me cry as well. But yeah, and then I ended up doing that role as well. So I became a volunteer at Rape Crisis. So I knew exactly what it was like. And I was one of the ones that put the phone down all the time. Oh no, they say, oh, I can't speak, and just slam the phone down. Yeah, I've been in both ends of that phone call.
So one of the messages that you have is, "We are stronger than we think."
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you could let people
Yeah,
know a bit about
don't, you know, people will say I never do what you do, but I don't believe I have superpowers. I'm just a human being like everybody else. I guess I'm a bit stubborn and wants to make up my mind, a bit determined. But we all really, I never thought I would ever share my story, let alone go on and speak to audiences of thousands, TV, radio, write a book, all of that. Yeah, so I think we all have that strength and that resilience inside us. And I think the only way to create that relationship with resilience is to step out of our comfort zone, because comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. It's stagnant, really. It's just comfort. So, you know, we grow when we expand ourselves. So if we can do just be 5%, 10% braver every day, just do something that you would normally avoid, and just expand yourself a little bit, and then allow that to settle and stay steady with it, and then find something else and become 10% braver, and then a little bit braver all the time. And then that's how we grow our resilience and our strength. And then our mind thinks, yeah, I've got this, I can do this, it's okay.
That's brilliant. So a little bit braver every day, and you're telling yourself, "I can do this, I can do this." And there are people around to support.
Yeah, and I think it's really, for me, on that night, I left my body very much, and I was very aware of watching everything while sitting on the wardrobe, but also being on the floor. So it was a little bit surreal. But for years, I never really felt like I was back in my body, if that makes sense. I felt like I was a house that I had rented that had no furniture, and I was unfurnished for many, many years. I've got full, fabulous furniture now. I'm good. But the trick also was grounding myself, connecting back into the earth, into my body, however that means for you. So for me, a lot of physical stuff as well as the talking therapies. So I did a few alternative things like breath work and fire walks and sweat lodges, but also, I ran quite a lot, but when I ran, I was never in my body. So yoga and walking, gardening, music, but being very aware and very mindful of what you're doing. Weightlifting, karate. I went to karate at 41, which I still go to now, gosh, nearly 20 years later. And, but that was really my fears of being out of control and being around men and wanting to get back into my body. And, weightlifting as well, you can't pick heavy shit off the ground without being connected into your breath, into your legs, into your feet. So I really had to find a way to come back into my body and ground myself and connect back in. And I think our relationship with our connection to ourselves ultimately is the overall one.
Yes. So you became embodied. So there's
that's a much quicker way of saying it. Yes.
Well, yes. I imagine it was safer not to be in your body.
Absolutely. It really didn't feel safe. Yeah. And numbed out completely for years. And so, yeah, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't safe to be there.
And then obviously you met your husband. Yeah. I'm not prying to that relationship, but I think you were saying he didn't fully know what had happened.
I was very young when I met him. I was only 17, which is now over 40 years ago we met. And at first I didn't tell him, but then we met overseas. We met in Israel, and he lived in Glasgow and I lived in London, and we would just take the bus, because it was a long time ago, overnight, or the train if we had some money, and write letters. And we saw each other every 2 weeks till eventually he moved to London. Now we live in Glasgow again. And, once it got serious, I had to start telling him, what had happened. And then once he asked me to marry him, I had to tell him, I'm never going to become a mum. I couldn't. The fear was so big of giving birth. I just thought, oh, going to be men at my cervix, my feet will be in stirrups, I'll be tied to a bed, all these stupid ideas of pregnancy and giving birth. And I just thought it would be traumatic for me. You know, I couldn't have a smear, couldn't even go to an optician, I couldn't have my teeth done. Everything scared me. And then that's when I flipped my decision about a few years after that. So he married me knowing I didn't want to become a mum. And then we were away, and he just wondered out loud, you know, how about starting a family? I think we've been married about 3 years. And I was just so ready to say, look, come on, I've explained, you know why I can't do that. And I just thought, you know, if I don't do this, then they've won. I'm giving them a massive chunk of my life, my potential life away. That's all that power and control are going to two men that I don't even see. I don't have any contact with them. They don't even know. I'm just handing my power away. And so obviously, as I've got 3 girls, I reversed that decision. I went to counselling then. I had to go through a few different counsellors. And I thought that was it. I thought I'd worked it, you know, because I became a mum. But then, you know, working our trauma is multi-layered. It's like many, many layers. And I think we work it for that time, and that's good. And then maybe in a few years, you might need to work another element or another dimension or another area of it, and then another bit, and you know, so it is really peeling that onion and getting to the core of it. But you're just building on the foundation till eventually, I think you come back to the original you, the you were before the trauma. You know, that horror, that fire in my belly, that goodness, that was just covered up with all the layers and layers of trauma and shame and fear. And eventually you can get back to that part, like you say, be embodied. And my head and my body were like 2 different planets. They weren't integrated at all. I just felt so disconnected from my heart and my head. And now I feel like everything's lined up again. I'm back being one body.
Sometimes people come into therapy and all sorts of stuff has happened. You know,
Yeah.
trauma has happened, and they often do a defense of, I'm sure I mean, other people have worse stories than me. There's this feeling of, I don't really deserve therapy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I wonder if you ever felt that, because I think it's really helpful for people to get.
Yes, I've had many clients say that to me, and also as well, I'm thinking, oh, I really should be over this by now. It was just one night. Come on, get a grip. And then, you know, when I was caught in denial, I said, I think I'm wasting your time here. I think I've made this all up. I think, you know, I was looking at false memory syndrome. I think that's what I've got. I don't think it's really my stuff. And then my therapist would say, but you've just thrown up in the bin here and your body's shaking and you're crying. If you've made that up, where is all that coming from? I said, I don't know. Maybe I'm really mentally ill. And I've just, you know, I would find excuses just not to believe it. And I also thought if he knew, he wouldn't want me. He would kick me out. He would be disgusted by what was done, because I really thought it was a reflection of me as well. So that's kind of 2 things. I'm denying it, but obviously underneath I always really knew. I was just doing my best not to reveal it. So it was very, very messy to start with. But once he, you know, stayed steady with me and believed me, which was very important, because I thought he wouldn't believe me or he'd think it was my fault. I just thought, okay, I can slowly reveal it. And he just said to me after a little while, you know, one day it would be good if you just told me all that they did to you. And it was like, oh, okay. Wow. So yeah, and it was very
racing. That must be like,
it was terrifying.
Why he said that, but I totally understand that. And
because I've skirted around it, and you know, he's like, get straight to the point, really, because you know, well, first of all, I went out, and then I was in a taxi, and he said, no, just take me straight back to when you're in the flat. What happened from that moment? So yeah, and that was very much the approach of the therapy that we did. It was, you know, you just work with what's going on in that moment, and he obviously could just see I was avoidance. So yeah, so eventually I just managed to find my voice, and even though I hated the sessions, something just always drove me to go back, knowing what I'd have to face. And also I kind of reverted back to somebody with no voice. I couldn't physically speak because I was that person, because after the event I didn't speak. Literally, I kind of was self-mute for about 3 years. I couldn't say anything because one of the things, the worst one said, that if you speak about it, we'll find you and we'll kill you. And I thought, I think he could do that. You know, some of the things he had done, I thought, I'd looked into his eyes and I thought he was actually capable of doing that. So that terrified me, that I know it wasn't rational, but in the sessions I thought, if I speak, even though they were Americans and more than likely back in America, and I was having therapy in Glasgow, maybe he'll find out, maybe he'll come back and get me. And so I was very much in a 13-year-old mind and body when I was doing therapy, very much regressed back to that moment, which is really kind of what you have to do, really, because that 13-year-old girl was stuck inside of me. I actually had to integrate to the whatever age I was when I was having the therapy, 40 odd.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I mean, it just sounds so horrifying.
Yeah, it was, but it also, stepping into it, diving into those darkest chapters, was the only way I could release its hold over me. And eventually, halfway through, it took a good year or two in my sessions. In fact, he was getting, I don't know if he was getting frustrated with me, maybe that's just my thought. And he said, because you're so stuck in denial, why don't you go and have some alternative therapies just to complement what we're doing here? So he suggested I went to therapeutic massage. And they believe that all the trauma is stuck in our body. You know, the body remembers, which is why I was being sick and triggered and shaking and crying. Yeah, and the very first time I went, I'm lying on the massage plinth, and I could hear this person that was just shouting and crying and fighting and screaming with their therapist. And I just thought, who is making all that noise? How rude are they? And then I realized it was all me. It was coming from me. But it really helped because there was no dialogue. And I was getting pictures and flashbacks, and I realized, you know, I've got to stop fighting this. I am going to drive myself madder with all of the denial because I couldn't make up how my body reacted. That really disturbed me, but it really, you know, helped me realize that, yeah, there is a lot of trauma in my body, and I have to find a way to get it out with speaking therapies and alternative body therapies. So that was a turning point in the talking therapy when I went for therapeutic massage, when I saw there's no way I would behave like that on purpose with a woman I didn't know. I'd never met her. You know, yeah, that really helped, actually, as difficult as it was, if that makes sense.
Yes, it totally makes sense. Now, you've got 3 daughters.
I do.
When you were pregnant, did you mind which sex? I guess what I'm getting to is, were you worried about?
I know. Why would life give me 3 girls, huh?
Well, I know. The universe has made you a blinder, right?
Yeah, really, huh? I know. You know, I'm absolutely, because I thought I'd never ever be pregnant or have a baby. I loved being pregnant. I had such great pregnancies and I had such great births. I've had 2 home births in this house that I'm speaking to you from. I had my first one in London, in a fabulous place where Stephen stayed overnight, and they were very into water births, and I think Stephen and I were there for 5 nights. So we were very nurtured and held. But yeah, obviously I did fear for them as they grew up. But then I saw that I could really infect my children's minds. If I project all my fear onto them, I could make them paranoid and fearful. And I wanted them to be strong, fierce, independent women. I didn't want them to be riddled with fear. So I had to really, that was also another journey with my fear. I had to let them live their life. And so Anna, at 15, my eldest, was going clubbing. She had a fake ID. And I just always said, look, I don't care where you are, what you've done. If you're stoned, you're drunk, whatever, you're scared, phone us and we will always come and get you. Always. And we've talked about consent and, you know, respect in relationships. Never do anything you don't want to do. Even if you start and you change your mind, it's okay to stop, whatever. And they did. They called me when she was drunk. Friends actually were trying to stop her from calling me. She was that drunk that she was thrown up, didn't know where she was. She was about 15, 16. Right. And then she called and she says, she said to me, you know, we came and got her. And then she explained that the friends were really, really scared. No, she said, phone my mum. My mum will be okay. It's okay. I'm allowed to get drunk. My mum will come. And I had to take out her lenses while she's thrown up over my shoulder, put her in her pajamas. And then she just said, Mum, I just realised now I was very vulnerable. And I'm not getting into blame here, but she realised that anything could have happened to her. And now she's 31, about to have a baby and hardly drinks at all. I'm not saying that the alcohol was to blame at all, because you have every right to go out and get drunk. But it was just her safety. I think she then realised that she was in a very vulnerable position, but she knew that we'd always be there for her. Always come and get them. And that's what I've done. And I've always, because I lied so much to my parents by covering it up and going to somewhere that was empty. I've always wanted them to be honest, and they are girls, whatever I want them to be. Some come to me, some don't. Some will tell me a few months later it's different. But I always try to communicate and keep it open. They go, Mum, enough. We don't want to speak about it anymore. Shush. But, that's just children.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 boys and a girl, and it's a terrible thing to admit. But of course, I worry a lot more about her than I worry than about boys.
And yet boys there's difficult stuff for boys, gangs and feeling included and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've all got to get a bit more sophisticated about it. And I think the biggest thing we can do, obviously, is to teach all our children around, behaviour.
Absolutely.
All that
and
stuff.
Also to call out other people's behaviour. If they take part in a WhatsApp chat where they're demeaning women, just say, I can't be part of this. Don't laugh along with it. That's part of rape culture as well. So not just your own behaviour, but really look out for your sisters, your brothers, your friends, and other people, and just call out inappropriateness. Really call it out. That's how we make change.
My sons will always, I've said, you do not let any single woman walk off on her own. You just don't. You have to walk with. Get home safely. That's just. I know it's boring. I know it's because they're 6'5" or something, but it's very complicated. But that's an entirely different conversation.
But it's all linked as well, isn't it? It is, because it is how do we bring up our children? How do we educate them about terrifying them? Because life is good as well. Life is really great, and it's the paradox, isn't it? There's always going to be horrible stuff taking place to people, and there's always going to be beautiful stuff, and it's about holding it all, I think, really learning to hold it all and not letting either overwhelm you, and just stay balanced and connected in with everything.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. There's so much in there. And the reason really why I'm doing this podcast and inviting people on it about how to have extraordinary relationships is this sense of building it forward, this ripple effect.
Yeah.
So the more we talk about stuff, the more people can hear people talking, the more hopefully they will have moments like aha moments.
Absolutely. I truly believe that if somebody hears someone else's story at the right time in their life, it can just give them a new map. It can highlight a whole new different direction that they didn't even think was possible. Because I know that's what happened to me. Courage is contagious. I got my courage from listening to other people. I think, well, if they can do that, I don't need to be anonymous anymore. I can do that. I can show my face. And now that's helping other people. So it is a massive ripple effect. So your stories are really powerful, and they can really change someone's life completely.
So where can people find you?
I'm on social media, or you can go to my website, madeleineBlack.co.uk, and just do a search and you'll find me.
Yes, you're not difficult to find, which is wonderful. And you're going to be a grandmother, so you're
I
going to be coming. Do you know if you've got a granddaughter or a grandson?
Yes, life has given us another girl.
This is really at some point a boy's going to come somewhere, but that's really interesting, isn't it?
At the moment, yeah. And it's funny because obviously we're very excited she was pregnant, but the moment we knew what flavour it was, it's like, it just increased the level of excitedness, even more. So yeah, we can't wait to welcome her. She's already so loved. So yeah, we can't wait to welcome her in real life.
And I hope you really enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've loved it.